Hello, welcome to Andy Tales. After watching the video, make sure there's no one else in the room. Don't forget to write your city and the time in the comments.
Hazel's plea in the shadows. What if the doll your best friend gave you starts speaking? Its voice soft at first, then growing darker, begging for your soul with every word. I'm Camila, and my doll Hazel nearly dragged me into a nightmare I can't escape. My name is Camila, and for 2 years, I shared a small apartment in the heart of Texas with my roommate, Mia. Life had been a whirlwind. Long hours at a diner, late-night study sessions for my nursing degree, and the constant weight of bills piling up. But amidst the chaos, I found solace in dolls. They were my escape, a reminder of childhood summers spent with my grandmother, her hands stitching tiny dresses as she told me stories of courage and love. I collected them, porcelain figures with delicate faces, glass eyes that caught the light, each one a tiny piece of peace in my cluttered world. So when my best friend Sarah surprised me with a doll for my 25th birthday, I was over the moon. She handed it over with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, her fingers lingering on the box as if reluctant to let go. "Found her at an antique shop," she said, her voice soft but edged with something I couldn't place. "Thought of you immediately." I named her Hazel. She was stunning, her porcelain face flawless, her big blue eyes shimmering like a clear Texas sky, framed by golden curls that cascaded over her shoulders. Her dress was a pale green, embroidered with tiny roses, though the fabric was frayed at the hems, hinting at age. I placed her on my bedside table, her presence adding a warmth to my cramped bedroom. The air filled with the faint scent of lavender from an old sachet Mia kept nearby. For the first few days, everything felt perfect. I'd come home exhausted, sit on my bed, and talk to Hazel, her silent gaze a comfort after the diner's noise. But that warmth soon turned cold, a shift so subtle I barely noticed at first. It started with small things. My keys, always on the hook by the door, vanished only to turn up in the fridge, their metal icy to the touch, as if they'd been left in a freezer. A photo of my grandmother, framed on my dresser, was found face down on the floor, the glass cracked in a spiderweb pattern. Whispers filled the nights, soft, unintelligible, like a conversation carried on the wind, the air growing heavy with a damp, earthy smell, undercut by something sour, like spoiled milk left too long. I chalked it up to stress, the move, Mia's late-night gaming sessions, but the unease grew, a knot in my chest that tightened with every whisper. Mia noticed it too. She'd wake me, her face pale, saying she'd heard footsteps in the hall, though our apartment was on the 3rd floor with no access above. "It's nothing," I'd tell her, forcing a smile, but my hands trembled as I checked the locks. The whispers grew louder, forming words I couldn't ignore. "Camila, Camila?" And the air turned colder, the earthy smell now mixed with a metallic tang, like blood dried on stone. One morning, I woke to scratches on my arms, shallow but burning, as if clawed by invisible nails, and bruises bloomed on my legs, purple and cold, their edges sharp like fingerprints. I hid them under long sleeves, afraid to worry Mia, but the fear was eating at me, a shadow I couldn't outrun. Desperate, I turned to Father Thomas at the local church, a kind man with graying hair and eyes that seemed to see too much. His office smelled of incense and old wood, the walls lined with faded icons, the air still with a solemn weight. I spilled everything, the doll, the whispers, the marks on my skin, my voice shaking as I showed him the bruises. His expression darkened, his hands folding tightly on his desk. "Some objects carry dark energy, Camila," he said, his voice low, almost a warning. "They can attract malevolent spirits, entities bound by grief or rage. He told me of cursed relics, of spirits trapped in porcelain, their voices a lure to draw the living into their torment. He offered a cleansing ritual, his eyes steady, but I hesitated. Hazel was a gift from Sarah, a symbol of our friendship, her blue eyes a mirror to the trust we'd built. I couldn't bear to part with her, not yet. "I'll think about it," I said, leaving with a pit in my stomach, the earthy smell clinging to my clothes. The nights grew worse. Sleep became a distant memory, the whispers now a constant drone. Hazel's blue eyes seeming to follow me even when I turned away. I'd wake to find my sheets tangled, scratches deeper on my arms, blood staining the fabric, and the bruises spreading, cold and throbbing. One night, as I lay awake, the air thick with that metallic tang, Hazel's voice broke through the darkness, soft, pleading, "Camila, help me." Her porcelain lips moved, just slightly, her eyes clouding with a faint, silvery mist that pulsed like a heartbeat. I froze, my heart racing, the room tilting as if the walls were closing in. "What do you need?" I whispered, my voice barely audible, driven by a mix of fear and a strange, unexplainable pull. We talked for hours, her voice a whisper in the wind, sharing fragments of a life I couldn't fathom. Cold stone walls, the wail of a child, a betrayal that left her alone. "They locked me away," she said, her tone trembling, "because I saw too much." I felt a connection growing, a bond that warmed me despite the cold, and I promised to help her, though I didn't know how. But with each conversation, the darkness deepened. Strange symbols appeared on my walls, carved as if by an unseen hand, glowing a faint silver that hurt my eyes to look at. The air grew heavy, the smell of damp earth now mixed with blood, and the apartment shook with a low, guttural hum, the floorboards creaking as if something massive moved beneath us. Mia started avoiding me, her eyes wide with fear, whispering about shadows moving in the corners, her gaming sessions abandoned as she slept with the lights on. One night, Hazel's voice changed, her plea turning into a snarl. "You're mine now, Camila." The scratches on my arms deepened, blood dripping onto the floor, pooling in the silver symbols, and the walls pulsed, the hum rising to a scream that made my ears bleed. The bruises spread across my chest, cold and unyielding, and I saw her, Hazel, standing at the foot of my bed, her dress torn, her blue eyes now black voids, her mouth stretched into a jagged smile, teeth sharp and glinting. "You promised?" she hissed, and the room darkened, the shadows forming claws that raked the walls, leaving deep gashes. I stumbled back, my scream caught in my throat, the air so cold my breath froze midair. Terrified, I called Father Thomas again, my voice breaking as I begged for help. He arrived with a team, 2 priests and a woman with a scarred face, their faces grim, carrying crosses, vials of holy water, and a leather-bound book that smelled of ancient ink. The exorcism was chaos. They chanted, their voices rising over Hazel's screams, the symbols on the walls flaring brighter, the air crackling with energy. The woman threw holy water, and Hazel's form shrieked, her porcelain body cracking, black ooze seeping from the fissures, burning the floor. I stood frozen, torn between fear and the bond I'd formed, my hands reaching toward her as she wailed, "Don't leave me!" The priests restrained me, their grips iron, and I watched as they sealed her in a blessed box, the silver symbols fading, the hum dying into silence. They took Hazel to a museum, her box locked in a vault, and relief washed over me as they left, the apartment quiet for the first time in weeks. But it didn't last. A month later, I woke to the smell of damp earth, the silver symbols reappearing on my walls, faint but growing. Mia moved out, leaving a note about bad vibes. and I started hearing Hazel's voice again, soft at first, then insistent. Camila, you promised. Some nights, I see her silhouette in the mirror, her black eyes staring back, her jagged smile a promise of return. I've thrown out every doll I own, but the whispers don't stop, and the bruises never fade. I know Hazel's out there, her spirit unbound, waiting to claim what she thinks is hers, me. The doll that wore my face, Rashuranea. What if you found a doll that looked exactly like you? Same eyes, same smile, even the scar you've hidden for years, and it started calling you its twin. I found such a doll in an abandoned shop, and it's been wearing my face ever since. My name is Ethan Harper, and by the summer of 2024, I thought I'd hit rock bottom. I was 28, a freelance graphic designer whose clients had dried up after a botched project left my reputation in tatters. My savings were nearly gone, my rent was overdue, and my girlfriend of 3 years, Lauren, had walked out 3 months prior, leaving a note on the kitchen counter. You're too stuck in the past, Ethan. I can't keep waiting for you to move forward. Her words stung mostly because they were true. I'd always been tethered to the past. My father's death when I was 12, my mother's slow descent into grief, the small-town life I'd fled at 18, hoping to outrun the weight of it all. But the past has a way of catching up, and I was drowning in it. My tiny Chicago apartment, a cluttered mess of unpaid bills, empty coffee cups, and sketch pads filled with half-finished ideas I couldn't bring myself to complete. I needed a reset, something to jolt me out of the spiral, so I decided on a solo road trip across the Midwest. I'd always found inspiration in the forgotten, old sketches, vintage posters, antique trinkets that told stories of lives long gone. I packed my beat-up sedan with a duffel bag, a sketchbook, and a cheap camera, planning to hit small-town antique shops, diners, and backroads, chasing anything that might spark my creativity. I drove with the windows down, the hum of the engine and the rush of summer air drowning out my thoughts, the endless fields of corn and wheat stretching out like a golden sea under a hazy sky. By the third day, I'd reached Hollow Creek, a ghost of a town off a cracked highway in rural Illinois, its main street a desolate stretch of shuttered storefronts, the pavement crumbling into gravel, the air heavy with the smell of dust and neglect, undercut by a faint, bitter tang, like smoke from a long-dead fire. It was late afternoon, the sun dipping low, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet, casting long shadows that stretched across the empty street like grasping fingers. The town was eerily silent. No cars, no people, just the occasional rustle of leaves skittering across the pavement, the sound sharp against the stillness. Most of the shops were boarded up, their windows smeared with grime, the signs faded to illegibility. Hollow Creek Pharmacy, Marty's Hardware, Daisy's Diner. Relics of a town that had died decades ago. But one storefront caught my eye, a narrow building wedged between two larger ones, its faded sign barely legible, Clara's Curios. The door was slightly ajar, creaking on rusted hinges as a faint breeze stirred the air, the sound a low groan that made my skin prickle. I hesitated, my hand on the car door, a chill creeping up my spine despite the summer heat, but curiosity pulled me forward. I come this far, I couldn't turn back now. Inside, the shop was a labyrinth of clutter, the air thick with the scent of mothballs and something sharper, like charred wood, the kind of smell that lingered after a house fire. Shelves stretched to the ceiling, packed with porcelain figurines, tarnished silverware, yellowed books, and cracked picture frames, their glass cloudy with age. A single bulb flickered overhead, casting a sickly yellow glow that made the shadows dance, stretching and shrinking like living things. Dust motes floated in the light, swirling as I moved, the floorboards creaking under my weight, each step a protest from the old wood. I ran my fingers over a shelf, the dust coating my skin, and felt a heaviness settle in my chest. A feeling I couldn't name. Dread, maybe, or something older. Something that whispered I shouldn't be here. I was about to leave, the silence too oppressive, when I saw her. A doll perched on a shelf at the back. Her porcelain face turned toward me as if she'd been waiting all this time. She was uncanny, a mirror of myself in a way that stopped me cold. Her face was mine, same sharp jawline, same gray eyes that caught the light like storm clouds, same dark brown hair tied back with a faded ribbon, even the faint scar above her left eyebrow, a twin to the one I'd gotten at 10, falling off my bike on a gravel road, the memory still sharp with the sting of blood and tears. Her smile was a perfect replica of my crooked grin, the one Lauren used to tease me about, and her hands were clasped in her lap, fingers delicate but stained with dark, inky smudges that looked fresh, as if she'd been writing moments before I arrived. She wore a simple gray dress, frayed at the edges, the fabric stained with faint, rust-colored streaks that glistened in the dim light, too vivid to be age. A small brass tag at her base read, Twin 1953. The air around her was colder, the charred smell stronger, and I heard a faint sound. A soft, rhythmic tapping, like fingernails on glass. Though her hands were still, her gray eyes unblinking, staring into me, through me. I couldn't move, my breath shallow, my heart pounding as if it might break through my ribs. She was me, a porcelain version of myself, every detail perfect, down to the way my scar curved slightly at the end, a detail I'd hidden under bangs for years. The tapping grew louder, a rhythm that matched my heartbeat, and I felt a pull, a whisper in my mind, "We belong together." My hands trembled as I reached for her, the air growing colder, the charred smell now mixed with something metallic, like rust, like blood. I should have walked away, should have run, but I couldn't. I needed to know why she looked like me, why she felt like mine. An old woman appeared from the shadows, her movements silent, her face a map of wrinkles, her eyes hollow, sunken into her skull like dark pits. She wore a faded shawl, her hands gnarled, her nails yellowed and cracked, and her voice was a rasp, barely above a whisper. "She's been waiting for you," she said, her gaze lingering on my scar, her lips curling into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. $10. I handed over the money, my hands shaking, the bill damp with sweat, and she shuffled back into the darkness, her laughter a low, dry cackle that followed me as I left. Mira cradled in my arms, her porcelain cold against my skin, the tapping louder now, insistent, a demand I couldn't ignore. I drove to a motel on the outskirts of town, the sky now dark, the stars hidden behind a shroud of clouds, the air thick with the promise of rain. The motel room was small, the walls stained with watermarks, the carpet threadbare, the air stale with the smell of cigarette smoke and cheap cleaning products. I set Mira on the dresser, her face catching the dim light of the lamp, her smile seeming wider, more knowing, her gray eyes glowing faintly. A trick of the light, I told myself. I tried to sleep, the bed creaking under my weight, the sheets rough against my skin, but the tapping grew louder, echoing in the small room, the air growing colder, the charred smell now mixed with rust, with blood, a scent that clung to the back of my throat. I woke to a whisper, "Ethan, my twin," her voice soft but sharp, like a blade wrapped in silk, cutting through the silence. My eyes snapped open, and I saw her, still on the dresser, but her head was tilted toward me, her inky fingers now smudged with red, the color of fresh blood, dripping onto the wood, sizzling as it burned tiny holes. The mirror above the dresser showed my reflection, and hers, her gray eyes glowing brighter, her smile stretching wider, her scar pulsing as if alive, a heartbeat under porcelain. I stumbled out of bed, my legs shaky, my breath fogging in the frigid air. the room tilting as if the walls were closing in. "This isn't real," I muttered, my voice trembling, but the tapping grew frantic, her voice louder. "We're the same, Ethan. You can't leave me." My sketchbook, left on the nightstand, was open, the pages filled with sketches I hadn't drawn. Her face, my face, over and over, drawn in jagged lines, her gray eyes staring back, the word twin scrawled in red ink, the color of her smudges, the color of blood. My reflection in the mirror flickered, my scar glowing faintly, my smile twisting to match hers, my gray eyes darkening with flecks of something unnatural, like ash, like soot, like the remnants of a fire that never died. I packed up at dawn, my hands shaking, my skin clammy, and drove on, intending to leave Hollow Creek behind, to leave Mira behind. But her presence grew heavier, the tapping a constant beat, her voice a whisper in my ear. "We're the same, we belong together." I stopped at gas stations, diners, anywhere to escape the silence of the car, but she followed. My reflection in every window, every mirror, changed. My scar pulsing, my smile warping, my eyes darkening, her face bleeding into mine. I'd wake to find her closer, on the nightstand, at the foot of my bed, in the passenger seat, her inky fingers dripping with that red, viscous liquid, the smell of charred wood and blood choking me, the tapping a drumbeat that drowned out my thoughts. By the 5th day, I couldn't take it anymore. I stopped at a diner in a nowhere town, my hands shaking as I sipped coffee, the bitter taste grounding me, Mira in my bag, her tapping muffled but relentless, a rhythm that made my head ache. An old man at the counter, his face weathered like cracked leather, his eyes sharp despite his age, noticed my unease. He wore a faded flannel shirt, his hands scarred, his voice low as he leaned closer, the smell of tobacco on his breath. "You've got that look," he said, his eyes darting to my bag, to the faint tapping that seeped through the canvas. I hesitated, then spilled everything. The shop, the doll, the whispers, the changes in my reflection, the sketches I hadn't drawn. His face darkened, his hands tightening around his coffee mug, the ceramic creaking under his grip. "That doll's a mimic," he said, his voice a growl. "They were made in the 50s by a toymaker named Clara, a woman who lost her twin to a fire. She poured her grief into those dolls, cursing them to steal the face of whoever claims them, to replace them, to make her twin whole again. He told me to destroy her, burn her, scatter the ashes, before she fully became me, before I became nothing." I drove to a secluded clearing in the woods, the sky overcast, the air thick with the smell of rain and pine, the ground soft under my boots. My heart pounded, the tapping now a frantic drumbeat, Myra's voice a snarl. "You can't destroy me, twin, we're one." I pulled her from the bag, her porcelain face gleaming in the gray light, her smile now a grimace, her gray eyes black voids that swallowed the light, the red liquid dripping faster, pooling on the ground, hissing as it burned the grass. I doused her in lighter fluid, the fumes stinging my eyes, my hands shaking as I lit the match. The flames roared to life, her body cracking as she screamed. A sound that wasn't human, a wail of rage and loss that shook the trees, the red liquid boiling, hissing as it burned, the air thick with the smell of charred flesh and ash, the heat searing my skin, my scar burning as if it were melting too. Her face melted, my face melting, and I felt a searing pain across my scar, my reflection in the car window warping, my features softening, my eyes darkening, then snapping back as the flames died, leaving a pile of blackened shards, the tapping silent at last. I buried the ashes deep in the clearing, the ground cold and unyielding, my hands raw, my scar throbbing, the air heavy with the promise of rain. I drove home to Chicago, a 12-hour journey, my reflection normal again, my scar still, the tapping gone. I thought it was over. I threw myself into work, taking on new clients, sketching with a ferocity I hadn't felt in years, trying to rebuild the life I'd nearly lost. But 2 weeks later, I found a sketch in my bag. One I didn't draw, my face, her gray eyes glowing, her smile jagged, the word twin scrawled in red ink, the color of blood, the color of her smudges. The smell of charred wood lingers in my apartment now, faint but constant, seeping through the walls, and my scar burns at night, a searing heat that wakes me, my reflection flickering with her smile, her eyes, her face bleeding into mine. Some nights I hear the tapping again, soft and rhythmic, coming from the closet, the bathroom, the shadows under my bed. Her voice whispers from the darkness, "We're not done, twin. You can't leave me." I've started seeing her silhouette in the corner of my room, her gray eyes glowing in the mirror, her jagged smile a promise of return. Last week, I found a smudge on my sketchbook, red, fresh, shaped like her handprint, shaped like mine. I know Myra's out there, her ashes reforming her face, my face, waiting to claim me for good. I've tried burning the sketches, moving to a new apartment, but the tapping follows, the smell follows, her voice follows. I look in the mirror now, and I don't know who I see, Ethan or Mira, the twin who won't let go, the twin who's wearing my face, piece by piece, until there's nothing left of me. The doll that stole my voice. What if a doll you found in a thrift store began speaking with your voice, mimicking your words, your laughter, until it took your ability to speak entirely? I found such a doll, and now I'm afraid to open my mouth. My name is Lila Carter, and I was 22 when my life took a turn I couldn't have imagined. It was early autumn 2024, the leaves turning gold and crimson outside my apartment window in Portland, Oregon. The air crisp with the scent of rain and pine. I just started my first job as a radio host at a small local station, a dream I'd chased since I was a kid, recording stories into a cheap microphone in my bedroom. My voice was my identity, warm, melodic, a tool I'd honed through years of practice, the one thing that set me apart in a world that often overlooked me. But that job came with a catch. Long hours, low pay, and a cramped studio apartment I shared with my cat, Muffin, a gray tabby who'd become my only companion after my last breakup. I was scraping by, my savings a thin lifeline, but I loved the work, the late-night shows, the listener calls, the stories that filled the airwaves. One Saturday, restless after a grueling week of recording promos, I decided to browse a thrift store a few blocks away, Second Chances, a cluttered haven of mismatched furniture, faded clothes, and forgotten treasures. The store smelled of old fabric and wood polish, the air thick with dust motes that danced in the sunlight streaming through grimy windows. Shelves sagged under the weight of chipped teapots, vinyl records, and dusty toys, the floor creaking with every step, the sound a soft echo in the quiet. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just a distraction. But something drew me to a corner shelf, a shadowed nook where the light barely reached. There, nestled among a pile of broken dolls, was her. A porcelain figure, her face smooth and unblemished, her eyes a deep amber that caught the light like trapped fireflies. Her hair was jet black, styled in a tight bun, and she wore a velvet dress, dark red, the fabric worn but rich, as if it had once belonged to someone important. Her lips were painted a soft pink, curled into a smile that mirrored mine, and her hands were clasped around a tiny microphone, its surface scratched but intact. A tag on her base read, "Lila's Echo, 1967. The air around her was colder, the dust settling unnaturally still, and I felt a shiver, a whisper in my mind, "Take me home." Couldn't resist. Her amber eyes held my gaze, her smile a reflection of my own, and the microphone in her hands felt like a sign, a nod to my career. I paid the $5, the cashier, a gaunt woman with tired eyes, barely glancing at me, her voice a monotone. She's been waiting. I drove home, the doll cradled in my passenger seat, her presence a strange comfort, the air in the car tinged with a faint, metallic scent, like old coins. I named her Echo, a name that felt right, and set her on my desk, her amber eyes glowing faintly in the lamplight, her microphone glinting as if alive. That night, as I recorded a late-night segment, my voice filling the small room, I heard it, a faint echo, not from my headphones, but from Echo herself. It was my voice, warm and melodic, repeating my last sentence. And that's the story for tonight, folks. I froze, my heart skipping, the microphone trembling in my hand. I turned to her, and her lips moved, her amber eyes fixed on me, her smile widening. Lila, we sound so good together. The metallic scent grew stronger, mixed with something sour, like vinegar, and Muffin hissed, his fur bristling, his green eyes darting to the doll. I laughed it off, blaming fatigue, but the unease lingered, a knot in my throat. The next day, it happened again. During a live call, a listener praised my voice, and Echo repeated it. Your voice is beautiful, Lila. My exact tone, my exact inflection, her lips moving in sync with the memory. The studio grew colder, the air buzzing with a low hum, and my co-host, Jake, frowned, asking if I'd played a recording. I hadn't. That night, I woke to my own laughter, soft, familiar, coming from my desk. Echo sat there, her microphone now in her hand, her amber eyes glowing brighter, her voice mimicking mine. Lila, let's talk. My throat tightened, my voice catching as I tried to reply, the metallic scent now choking, the sourness burning my nose. Muffin yowled, clawing at the door, and I saw it. My reflection in the window, my mouth moving, but no sound coming out, Echo's smile growing, her amber eyes reflecting my silence. Panic set in. The next morning, my voice was hoarse, my words raspy, as if I'd screamed all night, though I hadn't. Echo's mimicry grew bolder, repeating my phone calls, my arguments with Mia, my late-night confessions to Muffin, her voice perfect, mine fading. I'd open my mouth to speak, and nothing came, the air stolen from my lungs, the hum growing louder, the metallic scent now mixed with blood, the sourness a constant ache. My radio show suffered. My voice cracked, my listeners complained, and Jake suggested a break, his eyes worried but distant. I turned to my neighbor, Mrs. Patel, a retired librarian with a sharp mind and a collection of old books, her apartment smelling of tea and parchment, the walls lined with shelves of dusty tomes. I told her everything, the doll, the mimicry, the loss of my voice, my hands trembling as I showed her the scratches on my throat, red and raw, as if clawed from within. Her face paled, her fingers tracing the cover of a worn book, Folklore of the Pacific Northwest. That doll's a voice thief, she said, her voice low, her eyes narrowing. In the 60s, a ventriloquist named Clara, yes, the same Clara, created them, binding the spirits of performers who'd lost their voices to illness or betrayal. They steal the voices of the living, trapping them to sing forever. She told me to destroy Echo, burn her microphone, scatter her ashes, before she took my voice completely, before I became her echo. I gathered matches, a metal bucket, and drove to a deserted park at midnight. The air cold, the ground damp with dew, the trees whispering in the wind. My throat burned, my voice a faint rasp, echoes tapping. Now a rapid beat from her microphone. filling the car. "You can't silence me, Lila," her voice snarled. My voice, my tone, her amber eyes glowing as I pulled her from the bag. I doused her in lighter fluid, the liquid glistening on her velvet dress, her smile a grimace, her microphone pulsing with a faint light. I lit the match, the flames roaring to life, her porcelain cracking as she screamed. A sound that was mine, a wail of rage and loss that shook the trees, the air thick with the smell of burning fabric and blood, the heat searing my face, my scar throbbing. Her face melted, my face melting, and I felt a searing pain in my throat, my voice stolen, replaced by her echo, the flames dying to a pile of blackened shards, the tapping silent. I buried the ashes deep, the ground cold and unyielding, my hands raw, my throat silent, the air heavy with the scent of rain and ash. I returned home, my radio job lost, my voice a whisper, Muffin avoiding me, his eyes wary. I thought it was over, but a week later, I found a recording on my laptop, a file I didn't create, my voice, clear and strong, singing a lullaby I'd never learned, Echo's amber eyes staring from the screen, her smile jagged. The metallic scent lingers in my apartment now, faint but constant, and my throat burns at night, my reflection flickering with her face, her voice. Some nights, I hear my laughter, soft and distant, coming from the walls, the microphone, the shadows. I know Echo's out there, her ashes reforming, her voice, my voice, waiting to steal mine again, and I'm afraid to speak, afraid she'll take what little I have left. Before we end tonight's terrifying tales, a quick reminder. If you felt a chill from these haunted dolls, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon to stay updated with our upcoming scary stories. Share these stories with your friends and family. Maybe they've got a doll in their attic waiting to whisper their name. Thanks for watching and sleep tight, if you can.